But there are one or two points which I need to emphasize. One point which is very important is the 6 hats are not, repeat not, repeat not, repeat not, not categories of people. A lot of psychology is obsessed with categories. He's this, she's that, he's this, she's that. Once you put people in boxes, they sink ever deeper, never get out. The 6 hats are absolutely not categories of people. When the hats are in use, everyone at that moment is wearing the same hat. So if the green hat is in use, everyone is metaphorically wearing the green hat. It's not a matter of someone sitting there saying, I am the resident black hat thinker, that's all I'm going to do. Everyone is wearing the same hat. Then the hat will change, everyone changes. Sometimes I've come across people who've been inadequately trained, got the wrong idea, and they say, we've got a meeting, and should we have one purpose? Here, everyone is looking in the same direction, and everyone should be able to use all hats. Just as when you're driving a car, you should be able to use all the gears. You don't say, well, I'm just a first gear driver, or I only know how to drive in the 4th gear. Use all the gears. Indeed, we often find that people who hitherto have considered themselves black hat critical users, given the hat system, they say, fine, I can do that, but I can also do the creative side. And indeed, they enjoy that possibility, they enjoy that holiday from their normal thinking, the ability to think differently. Now, the second point, which is important, is that if we want to change people's behavior, we usually try and change the person. Religion may say, let's make you a better person, then you'll treat other people better. Then along came Freud and says, if we understand your motives, your behavior, your background, your upbringing, we understand why you do things, that understanding may make you behave better. And then you have various forms of training and sensitivity training, make you a better person, you behave better. Now, all those systems are slow and not very effective in changing behavior. So now we might go back for a moment to Confucius from China. Confucius said, what I'm really interested in is how you behave to others. Not so much what your psyche is, how you behave. How you behave to your family, to your subordinates, to your superiors, to your colleagues, and so on. Get your behavior right, and the rest will follow. Now, the 6 hats mode is in that direction. If you are an aggressive person, the 6 hats is not going to say to you, don't be aggressive. But if the yellow hat is in use, then be aggressive, but you have to use your aggression in a positive, constructive fashion. So by going straight to behavior, you can get big, big changes. You're not trying to change people first in order to get different behavior. You're going straight to behavior. Now, there are 2 broad ways of using the hats. The first way is what I call occasional. Occasional, as it implies, is the use of a single hat, one at a time. You might be having a discussion, an argument or something of the sort, and at a certain point you feel you need new ideas, you need fresh alternatives. So you say, right now, for 3 minutes, let's have some green hat thinking. That indicates 2 things. Let's have some deliberate creative thinking, and let's all think in parallel for that time. At the end of that time, you can get back to your conversation, discussion, argument, whatever it was. Later on, you might get to a point where you have a suggestion and you need to assess the risks. So you say, let's have some black hat thinking for a limited period of time. So occasional means the use of a single hat in order to ask for a mode of thinking. This can become part of the language of a school, of a family, of an organization. So at any moment, whether it's a family argument or discussion or in school and you're treating a subject, you can say, right now, let's have some green hat thinking on this. Now, because the colors of the hats are artificial, it allows you to ask for a big change in thinking very sharply. If you just said to yourself, If you just said to yourself, or to others, don't be so negative, or let's be more creative or something, that is very weak. Because people take it personally if you say don't be negative, but with the hats it's abstract, it's impersonal, it's remote. You can say it's very good black hat thinking, now let's have some yellow hat thinking. So what you do with the hats, it gives you a language, a symbology for switching thinking as often as you like and as sharply as you like. And that's one of its great advantages. It gives you a way of handling thinking, putting strategy into thinking. Then the second way we can use the hats is the systematic way. Systematic means we put together an agenda, a program of hats, and use them one after the other, going through them sequentially. Now, how much time do we spend under each hat? That will depend on how many people are on the group, but it's much, much better to set a short time, maybe as short as 3 minutes. But if at the end of 3 minutes you're still getting caution ideas, you extend the time as necessary. Much better to set a short time and extend it than to set a long time and sit around wondering what to think next. Now what we find is that with the hats, because the method is so fast, you can say a great deal in a very short time. Because in normal thinking, when someone says something, you are obliged to respond to what has been said, even if only out of politeness. With the 6 hats system, everyone at every moment is thinking about the subject. The ideas are put down in parallel. You do not agree or disagree, you put it down in parallel. So much, much faster. Now, in terms of the systematic use, there are 2 broad approaches to setting up the sequence. The first approach is what we might call preset. Preset means you put the sequence of hats together before you start, and then you go through that sequence one after the other. Preset. Second type is evolving. Evolving means you choose the first hat, and when you've finished with that, you choose the second, and when you've finished with that, you choose the third. Now, I would advise you against evolving until you are very familiar with the framework. The reason is that you will spend so much time arguing about which hat to use next, you won't have much time to think about the subject. So now there's no one right sequence. You can use each hat as often as you like or not at all. There's no one right sequence. The sequence will vary a lot depending on the subject that is being considered. Generally speaking, you would always start with the blue hat. The blue hat at the beginning is to say, what are we thinking about? If it's a problem, what are alternative definitions of the problem? The blue hat is there to say, with what do we want to end up? The blue hat is there to set the agenda of hats as you go through. So the blue hat is setting up the situation. What are we here for? What are we doing? What type of thinking is it? Is it problem solving? Is it exploration? Is it design? Similarly, at the end, we have another blue hat, which is like the other bookend, and this blue hat says, what have we achieved? Under this blue hat, we make decisions, outcomes, we design the next steps, and so on. Now, very often people say to me, all this is exploration, how do we make the final decision? What in practice very often happens is by the time you've got to the end, the decision has made itself. Because if we look at it, what is decision making? Decision making means directing our attention to the consequences of a choice, to our feelings, to our values, and making a decision. But if all these have been laid out under the hats, the decision has actually designed itself. So when you come to the end, the decision is very often self-evident.